There we go. Welcome back. Here's the topic for the week, and I think it's a provocative one, and it's the test. I think if I were to ask each and every one of you, has life ever tested you? The answer would be an obvious and unequivocal yes. And I could also ask you, are you to some degree, whether small, medium, and large, are you going through a test right now? Have you ever had a extended period of your life where the test was not being conducted, where whatever the test is, you were not experiencing a test? So this is tied for first amongst the great questions that humans can ask and what truly uh, tests our faith. And this obviously leads to one of the greatest stories in all of literature. By far, it's an astonishing play, if you will, and it's the story of Job. And some have read it, some haven't, but it's a fascinating story because Job undergoes perhaps the greatest of all testing. And Job is not a bad dude. Job is good, upstanding, has character, no obvious character distortions. And for some reason, in this crazy play written by some Hebrew cat a long, long, long time ago, probably 3,000 years ago, maybe that's how old the story is. It's like the devil comes and has a chat with God about testing Job, and the devil saying that he can break Job, and God going, no, Job's too good of a man, he won't do that. But anyway, I don't want to dive too deep into the story. I want to dive into the question of the test. So what's up with being tested? Or have you ever been tested to your limits in your life? Are you now being tested? Do you have a kind of a recurring test? So I do in my test. And again, I do want to qualify this by saying uh, I'm not bringing this up uh, to complain by any stretch of the imagination, but one of my big tests, so to speak, I guess, if there is such a thing, would be migraine headaches. And so yesterday I had a Whopper, and still, when I have one like this, it lasts for days, and it just sucks. It's like, what's the, why am I, I've tried everything. I mean, I could make a hilarious list of the things that I've tried and that I'm willing to try. And it doesn't, it just continues. So uh, I'm not going to answer, I'm not even going to try to answer the question of the test today. I'm not sure that I can perhaps approach the answer or come up with a different angle. I'm much more interested in asking questions. I think if I do have any skill, I hope I've got some sort of skill. It's maybe asking questions, not necessarily giving answers, but all teachers should have insight and be able to answer things. But the interesting thing about many teachers are their ability to ask questions. So, if there is such a thing as a test, do you agree that life has tests? Okay, now if that's the case, where does the test come from, and what purpose is it serving? Since we do have tests, and if we do believe in a purposeful, intelligent universe managed by a loving, all-powerful God, who is designing and implementing these tests on you personally? Is it, if we think of a God that's giving us tests, then we think of God as like a gigantic accountant wearing an old fashioned British felt visor with the kind of the glasses pushed down his nose, just testing each and every one of us, seeing seeing how much we can take. What's our breaking point? Do we really have faith? Will we really give up under stress? And if that's the case, as a great author that I read once said, it's like, shouldn't God already know? Doesn't God already know us well enough to know what we can take and what we can't take? Would you, as a parent, continuously test your child with something unbelievably or ridiculously painful, or wouldn't you just rescue them? If you looked outside and you saw your child had slipped on a old-fashioned barbed wire fence, one of your precious kids, and they were hanging on this fence with it had caught part of their body and they were screaming for help and they were undergoing an incredible test that they couldn't pass on their own, would you make them wait a little longer, or would you run out and get them and help them? That answer to me is so incredibly obvious. So, are you more loving and more compassionate than God is? These are big questions, and I think if we ask big questions, so here's another angle on tests. Are we testing ourselves? Do we have to develop and create tests while we're on earth? And are we only subject to the tests that we make for ourselves? Are we tested by temptation, sloth, greed, all the things that life can test us? And then do we make our own tests based on our own what we're capable of doing? Well, it seems as though in many cases we do make our own tests, because think of all the tests that you've unequivocally passed in your life. The test to be a real estate agent, or the test to be a professional in your trade, or the test. This is obvious. We've passed many tests. But then this, of course, leads to the ongoing tests that we're facing today. I bet right now you're facing a test. And why is that test going on? Well, now we circle back around to Job. And one of the greatest comments in all of literature is where Mrs. Job, who's not very happy about what's going on in her life, because the Jobs had lost the kids, some animals, some land. She wasn't really happy being around Mr. Job with the boils and the misery and the suffering. And finally, this is one of the greatest lines. Mrs. Job says to Mr. Job, "Curse God and die." You know, I mean, do you ever feel like doing that? Do you ever feel like shaking your fist when you look out in the world? And except I think most of us are afraid of cursing God and asking WTF when it comes to our tests, because we're afraid that if we complain about our tests, then we'll get in bigger trouble or we'll push the boundaries. And this brings up even a bigger question. Do we have a codependent relationship with God where we're just afraid to ask big questions? And to me, that can't be God. That's my family of origin, where if I asked a really big question, I'd get my ass kicked. I really would, by somebody. So today we're asking really big questions. If you've been through tests, and you have, if you're going through tests and you are, where is it coming from? What test do you need to pass? Is it possible that you've passed the test that you need to pass and you could simply give your own self a pass? Has God already forgiven you? There's another big question. Okay, that's all I got for today. Ask big questions, get big answers. What's your test and why are you going through it? See you tomorrow.